Every time you uh, ask an AI for advice, you are implicitly agreeing to a uniquely Western, highly individualistic philosophy.
Yeah, which is something most people don't even realize they're doing.
Right. I mean, whether you're just scrolling through a personalized social feed or, asking a chatbot to draft an email for you or just relying on a navigation app to avoid traffic.
Exactly.
Those apps are designed to optimize for one thing, and that's you. They cater to your preferences, your data, and your isolated convenience. But what if the underlying code of these technologies was rewritten from the ground up to realize that you don't actually exist without us?
It's a profound shift in perspective because we are deeply conditioned to view technology as this neutral tool, right? Like it was just a cold set of mathematical weights and biases running on a server or something.
Yeah, just pure math.
Right. But beneath the code, there's always a foundational logic dictating what matters, what is valuable and what is expendable. And right now, that logic overwhelmingly favors the individual.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because tomorrow is July 18th, which, as you might know, is Nelson Mandela International Day.
A big day.
Yeah, normally this is a time for historical retrospectives. But for today's deep dive, we are looking at a really fascinating stack of discussion notes from the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Sustainable Development, or CASD.
Right. And their mission is entirely forward-looking here.
Exactly. They are examining how Nelson Mandela's guiding philosophy of Ubuntu is being positioned not just as some feel-good moral idea, but as a radical, necessary, structural corrective for the global future of artificial intelligence.
And I mean, that corrective is desperately needed. While the individualistic focus of Silicon Valley has undeniably produced incredibly capable technology, it has also created massive, glaring blind spots.
Like what?
Well, when a system optimizes purely for a single user's engagement, it frequently does so at the direct expense of community well-being. It individualizes the responsibility for harms that are actually structural.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we see this when data extracted from entire populations is treated merely as the private property of, well, whichever corporation happened to harvest it first.
Okay, so I buy the premise that there is a problem. But to understand the proposed solution, we really need to dig into the philosophical bedrock here. Let's move from the problem of individualistic AI to the concept of Ubuntu itself. What exactly is this philosophy in a concrete sense?
So to grasp it properly, we really need to look at the Nguni phrase that sat at the absolute heart of Mandela's worldview. It's Ubuntu Ngabantu.
Which translates to?
Translated literally, it means a person is a person through other persons. Now, you often hear this simplified in English to, I am because we are.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that version.
Most people have. But philosophers like Mogobe Ramos and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, they frame Ubuntu as something much sharper than just a simple, warm slogan for reconciliation. They frame it as an ethical demand.
An ethical demand, meaning it isn't just a state of being, it requires a specific type of action from you.
Yes, exactly. Philosophically, Ubuntu locates your actual personhood, your fundamental identity in your relationships and your obligations to others rather than in your autonomous, isolated will.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, to recognize another person's humanity is to be intrinsically obligated to protect and nurture it. So identity and rights are based on mutual accountability.
Let me stop you right there because that sounds like a massive friction point. I mean, if my identity and my rights are entirely bound up in mutual accountability, does my individual will just disappear into the collective?
That's a very common question.
Well, practically speaking, in the West, we tend to view rights as a shield, right? Like to protect the individual from the community or the state.
Right, and that is the core tension here. In an Ubuntu framework, you don't hold rights as a weapon against the community. Your rights are realized within the fabric of community relationships.
Because no one is fully human in isolation.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that Mandela actually used this philosophy practically in his leadership and consultation. He insisted that solutions had to be forged collectively, even when it was painfully slow or difficult, because a solution imposed by a sovereign individual wouldn't hold up in the real world.
That is a staggering contrast to how technology is built today. I mean, Silicon Valley's liberal individualism treats the user as a sovereign island.
Completely.
Your data is your private property, your consent is all that matters, and the free market is viewed as this ultimate objective judge of what is beneficial.
Which is a very specific, isolated way to build things.
Right. Think of it like a forest, right? where the reigning AI algorithm is designed to reward just the one tree that hoards the most water.
I like this analogy.
So in this case, the water is user data and attention. The algorithm pushes that one tree to grow incredibly tall, but it completely ignores the fact that its massive, aggressive root system is turning the surrounding soil into, like, dead, barren dust.
Right, starving everything else out.
Exactly. Whereas Ubuntu asks us to write an algorithm that measures success by the nutrient density of the soil itself. It optimizes the entire forest.
It's a great analogy because it really highlights the mechanism of the harm. Individual optimization can actively deplete the surrounding environment.
But I gotta be honest, I'm stuck on the reality of the engineering here. I mean, it is one thing to talk about philosophy and leadership and forests,
Sure.
but it's another entirely to talk about servers and data sets and global tech monopolies. How does this idea of community optimization actually change a line of code or a data privacy law? Let's look at data governance. What does this look like in practice?
Well, let's use a tangible example. Consider a new predictive health algorithm, okay? The developers need to train it on medical information drawn from a rural village. Under a standard Western framework, the problem of data governance is solved by individualizing it. You hand out individual consent forms. If 50 individuals sign on the dotted line, their data is extracted, the model is trained, and the corporation owns the resulting algorithm.
Right, the mechanism is purely transactional and individualized.
Exactly.
Wait, but practically speaking, if my medical data is in a community pool instead of just being mine, doesn't that violate my right to privacy? I mean, how does an Ubuntu-informed framework balance the collective good with the fact that I might not want my neighbors or a foreign tech company knowing my health history?
Right, so it doesn't mean abandoning privacy or, broadcasting your personal health records to your neighbors. Anonymization protocols absolutely still exist. What changes is the mechanism of value and consent.
How so?
An Ubuntu diagnostic asks an entirely different question at the start of the project. What is the community as a whole owed in return for the collective knowledge extracted from them?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if a corporation builds a highly profitable diagnostic tool based on the genetic or environmental realities of a specific linguistic or ethnic group, Ubuntu dictates that the community must have a stake in the outcome.
So it shifts the entire power dynamic of who benefits from the data. And CISD notes this dramatically changes the mechanics of algorithmic justice too, right? Because usually when we talk about fixing a biased AI, we talk about tweaking fairness metrics for individual outcomes. Like, we want to make sure the algorithm approves a loan for person A at the same rate as person B.
Exactly, just tweaking individual fairness.
But you were saying an Ubuntu diagnostic zooms way
out. It asks a communal historical question. Does this AI system entrench, or does it actively repair historical patterns of exclusion for entire groups?
which is absolutely vital for health AI right now. Because, based on the notes, currently high-income diagnostic tools frequently misread African populations. The baseline data they are trained on is simply wrong for the local context.
And the standard tech industry fix for that is just to parachute in, extract more local data to fix the baseline, and then, sell the tool back to the community.
Which is wild.
Right. But an Ubuntu approach fundamentally alters that mechanism. It requires that health AI isn't just deployed to a population. It must be co-developed with the communities it serves.
Walk me through what co-development actually means on the ground, though. Does a rural community sit down and write Python code?
No. It happens at the level of parameter setting and validation. Across the African continent, primary healthcare relies really heavily on local community health workers.
Okay.
Under an individualistic tech model, an AI diagnostic tool is often designed to bypass these workers, like to put a proprietary app directly in the hands of a patient.
Yeah.
But an Ubuntu model treats those community health workers as validating partners.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they are the ones who sit with the developers to define what a successful health outcome actually looks like for their village. They contextualize the data.
It integrates the human relationship into the tech loop rather than trying to just automate it away.
Precisely.
And CISD has already been proving this works mechanically, haven't they?
Yes. They're pilots with the UNDP in Zambia, and alongside the African Development Bank, they provide a really clear blueprint. They have shown that participatory design and cooperative, peer-based AI literacy programs actually yield much higher adoption and success rates than just handing out individualized, credential-driven online training.
Because they're doing it together.
Exactly. Learning and adapting to AI is treated as a social communal process, not an isolated task.
Okay, I see the appeal, but let's face the geopolitical reality here. Wait, so does this mean African nations should just tear up established Western regulations like the European Union's GDPR? Like, if the underlying philosophy is so entirely different, do they just start from scratch and refuse to play ball with global standards?
Not at all. And CISD is very pragmatic about this. Frameworks like the GDPR are highly valuable for establishing baseline protections against corporate overreach.
Yeah.
But Africa shouldn't adopt those frameworks uncritically as the ceiling of what is possible.
Right.
The continent has its own frameworks, like the Malabo Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection.
Take 30 seconds and explain the Malabo Convention for someone who maybe hasn't heard of it. How is it different from the GDPR?
Sure. So the Malabo Convention is an African Union framework that attempts to balance personal data protection with national security and economic development.
Okay.
Where the GDPR is hyper-focused on the individual's right to control their data, like the right to be forgotten. For instance, an Ubuntu-inspired reading of Malabo might ask about the community's right to collective data sovereignty.
That makes a lot of sense.
The point CASD is making is that Africa must bring its own philosophical resources to the table at major multilateral forums, like, say, the UN Global Dialogue on AI Governance. You retain the individual protections of something like the GDPR, but you insist on building in mechanisms that account for collective community outcomes.
I see. So we have the philosophy and the data mechanics, but we have to ask, how do we actually force global tech giants and massive governments to adopt this? I mean, taking a philosophy and making it standard operating procedure is a massive leap.
It really is.
Interestingly, the CAI's notes suggest we should look to the institutional record of Mandela Day itself for the blueprint of how to execute this.
Yeah, the background of Mandela Day is incredibly revealing when you look at how a moral idea becomes an institutional reality. It was adopted back in November 2009 via a UN General Assembly resolution.
Resolution ARS 6413 for the policy nerds out there.
Exactly. It had the backing of over 165 member states, recognizing Mandela's dedication to conflict resolution and human rights.
Wow.
But crucially, it was deliberately engineered as a global day of active civic service, not just a passive day of remembrance.
Right. It asks people for 67 minutes of active service, which is 1 minute for each year Mandela devoted to public life.
Right. And that brings us to a very poignant moment the CISD notes highlight regarding the danger of symbolism.
Oh, the New York speech.
Yeah. On July 15, 2026, the Nelson Mandela Foundation launched its inaugural Global Leadership Forum in New York, and the keynote was delivered by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who actually spent part of his childhood in Cape Town.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are just imparting what was in the source notes here, not endorsing any political stances. But what was his message?
He delivered a very stark warning against reducing Mandela to a flattened myth.
Huh.
He reminded the audience that Mandela was a complex man who made hard, contested choices. Mamdani argued that true solidarity is a deliberate, ongoing choice that people have to actively make, often at the expense of their own immediate comfort.
That is a really powerful point, and KSD draws a direct mechanical line between that speech and how artificial intelligence operates.
They do.
Because, flattening a complex, revolutionary historical figure into a simple two-dimensional symbol is the exact same abstraction error we make when AI systems reduce complex living communities into flat data points on a dashboard.
Exactly.
When you abstract a human being into a metric of engagement, you lose the nuance, you lose the friction, and you just lose the humanity.
Which raises an important question.
Mm-hmm.
How do we prevent our AI policies from doing the exact same thing?
Mm-hmm.
How do we stop this from just being a nice sentiment? Mm-hmm. If we look at the policy level, we can look at what the African Union did. They didn't just celebrate Mandela Day once a year. They adopted the Madiba Nelson Mandela Decade of Reconciliation, running from 2014 to 2024.
They made it a long-term thing.
They translated the moral inspiration of a single day into a binding, decade-long continental framework to guide actual peace and mediation programs. ASE argues that Ubuntu AI needs to make this exact same structural leap. It has to move from being an interesting debate on a deep dive like this one into binding, enforceable continental policy.
So what does this all mean for the tech industry? Here's where it gets really interesting, because some organizations aren't waiting for the policy to catch up. They are already putting boots on the ground.
Yes, they are.
If we look at how the South African tech and public sectors are living this out today, we can see the actual mechanics of Ubuntu AI in action. It is not just theoretical.
Far from it. Let's look at the sheer scale of the Coding for Mandela tournament.
Oh, this is a great example.
Yeah, this is a partnership between Nelson Mandela University's Computing Sciences Department and the Leva Foundation, operating under an initiative called Tangible Africa.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about handing a kid an iPad. They use unplugged coding methods like physical tokens and group problem solving to teach computational thinking without needing a massive server infrastructure.
And the growth of that mechanism is staggering. The notes say in 2022 they had roughly 6,000 youth coding simultaneously.
Right.
But by 2024, marking 30 years of South African democracy, that grew to 32,000 learners participating across 70 sites in South Africa and 7 other African countries. They are physically weaving a community together through digital literacy.
And we are seeing the corporate tech sector get its hands dirty, too.
Yeah.
Look at Mandela Day in 2025. Organizations like the Innovation Hub, Kikulcha, and various mobile tech manufacturers like Techno and ITEL, they spent their 67 minutes teaching AI literacy, robotics, and even drone piloting to learners at the LIV Lanseria orphanage. But again, the focus wasn't just on the technology itself. They explicitly framed this digital inclusion as a continuation of Mandela's legacy of community empowerment.
But my absolute favorite example of this, where the technology genuinely acts as a multiplier for Ubuntu, is the partnership between the grocery delivery app Checkers 6060 and Meals on Wheels Community Services.
Oh, yes.
Running into 2026 for a 4th consecutive year, they use their commercial delivery app to drive a massive food donation campaign.
Let's break down the mechanism of that app because it's brilliant. Typically, a delivery algorithm is designed to move a product from a warehouse to an isolated individual as quickly as possible, right?
Right.
Checkers inverted that entirely. Customers donate through the app. Checkers dynamically matches the donation value, and their routing algorithm calculates and refunds the delivery fees.
They turned a hyper-individualized convenience app into a decentralized, multi-year logistical infrastructure for feeding people. Over 3 years, they raised 2.7 million rand in groceries.
That's incredible.
And that money goes directly into supporting a continuously running baseline operation. Meals on Wheels operates 182 branches nationwide, feeding 192,000 people every single day.
Wow.
Plus, they run a massive warehouse drive in Johannesburg, supplying over 60 kitchens across the province. The algorithm maps the surplus, routes the drivers, and just scales community solidarity in a way manual charity drives simply cannot match.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proves AISD's exact stance. Ubuntu-style technology is not just aspirational poetry. It is a proven, scalable practice. You really can code for community.
You really can.
And the government is recognizing this shift from the symbolic to the structural. In July 2026, President Cyril Ramaphosa used the Mandela Day platform to officially launch the Unserved Communities Access Acceleration Program. Again, reporting on the policy here, this demonstrates a massive shift toward concrete digital delivery to close the access gap.
Which brings us right to the ultimate challenge Z is putting out to you, the listener, and really to the entire tech world for Mandela Month and beyond.
They lay out some very clear core mandates to close this out.
Right. First, Ubuntu must be treated as a strict design requirement, not a metaphor. African communities must evaluate AI systems based on what they do to relationships and collective well-being, not just whether they generate a commercial return.
Absolutely. Second, Africa does not need to import its AI ethics wholesale from Silicon Valley or Europe. The continent possesses incredibly deep philosophical resources to guide this technology into the future.
And third, they stress that the traditional 67 minutes of service is merely a floor, not a ceiling. Yes, donate 67 minutes of your time to run an AI literacy session in your community. But institutions, corporations, and governments need to go further.
They really do. They must convert that Mandela Day pledge into trackable monthly commitments through the end of the year. AISD is holding themselves to this standard, committing to treating Ubuntu as a practical, measurable benchmark for every AI initiative they touch moving forward.
KA's frames their closing image perfectly, I think. An AI system worthy of Africa is one that makes us more, not less, of a community. Mandela Day serves as the annual reminder, but Ubuntu is the standing instruction for the code we write every single day.
It demands that we ask a harder question of our technology, not just what our AI can do, but who our AI makes us accountable to.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If human identity, rights, and dignity are truly only forged in relationship with others, as Ubuntu teaches, as Mandela lived, and as Ubuntu demands, can an artificial intelligence isolated on a distant server farm, processing inputs in the dark, ever truly be considered intelligent if it is entirely disconnected from the messy, contested, lived experience of human community? Think about that the next time you ask a chatbot for advice.